Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. You're watching Learn Tech with Sandip with Sandip Das, and in this session today we're going to cover the day 7, that is networking in GoLang for DevOps, and we're going to cover the HTTP client and server fundamentals, then creating RESTful services with Go, and then how we can interact with the APIs via the GoLang itself, and then how we can make it more secure using HTTP certificates. Okay, now let's get started without wasting any time. Now the very first topic is exactly what is a HTTP client and what is the HTTP server. Okay, now what is the client? Now a client is any program that sends the request to the server. Now in particular the context of the web, the most common client is the web browser, but it can also be mobile or any command line tool or any software it can be. Okay, now the client sent an HTTP request to the server, and what are the things this request might include? First is the method, and method can be HTTP get method, HTTP post method, HTTP put method, HTTP delete method, and there are a few other methods. Okay, then the URL, which identifies the resource on the server that the client is trying to access or client trying to operate. Okay, then the header, and this header will contain metadata like type of the browser, preferred format, cookies, etc. Okay, and then the body, which contains the actual data in case of it's a post call or the put call. Okay, now look very carefully at the above diagram. Okay, and you might observe there that as an example of a client, I'm taking the web browser, and web browser making request to the web server, and then request getting forwarded to the application server, and application server might interact with the database server. Now understand about the client first. Okay, client is a web browser, and it can be a mobile application, it can be a command line interface, CLI app, or it can be other software. Okay, now then what is a server? Okay, a server is a program that listens to the request from the client and send back the responses. Okay, and this can be a web server hosting website or an API server providing the data for apps. Okay, now when a server receives a request, it processes it and send back an HTTP response, which includes first the status code, which indicates its outcome is the success, then 200 is the failure, then it's 400 if it's any server error, then 500 status code. If the request that the client is trying to access is not there, then it will say 404 not found. Okay, and then headers, similar to the request header, it will just say the header will contain some metadata. Okay, the response related metadata. Okay, and the body, now this body is the response body. Okay, and this data being sent back to the client like HTML pages, images, or API data such as JSON data. Okay, or it can be other format data. Okay, so this is a server response contains. Okay, now there are some important points that I want to explain. That is the connection. I mean, what I mean by the connection. The connection typically means the client establishes a TCP connection with the server. Slash 1.1 supports the persistent connection for multiple requests, and then there is some stateless protocol. Okay, so HTTP is a stateless, meaning each request response by independent session and state are managed using cookies or other techniques. Then HTTPS. Now secure. What is HTTPS? HTTPS is secure version of HTTP. It encrypts the data to prevent eavesdropping and tampering, which is to mainly prevent the man in the middle attack. Okay, then there is a new thing called HTTP2. What is it? This provides performance improvement like multiplex stream and header compression. Okay, then HTTP3, which is further improvement based on a quick. Okay, that is a transfer layer network protocol. We might discuss more on the HTTP3 in my later session, not today. Okay, now this is all about the HTTP client and server fundamentals. Now let's learn about the REST API. So what exactly is the REST API? REST, or representational state transfer API, is set of an architectural principle for designing network applications, and it uses HTTP requests to access and manipulate data. Now what are the key principles of this REST APIs? First one, that is resource based. Now the fundamental concept in REST is the resource. Okay, and resources are data entities, object, or services that is accessed by client, and each resource is identified by a URL which provides a global address to the resource of the web. Okay, then second principle is the stateless communication. Now each HTTP request from a client to server must contain all information needed to understand and complete the request, and the server does not store any state about the client session on the server side. Okay. And the third principle, that is the use of standard HTTP methods. That is, the REST API uses the HTTP methods to perform operations such as get to retrieve data, then post to create the resource, put to update the existing resource, delete to remove the existing resource, or patch to apply some partial modification to existing record. Okay. Now let me show you how you can build a REST API in GoLang. The REST API code you will find in the day 7, then the Go REST API folder. Okay. There you should first look at the Go mod file, where you'll find the module name, the version, but more importantly, this is the mux which is used in the REST API routing and the MongoDB driver, because to store data we are using MongoDB. Okay. Then you should look at the main.go file. Okay, where you will notice we are using the DB for our database related things. Then using handler. Of course, there also we are using there you have the logic to interact with the databases and the APIs, of course, and then the mux for the routing. Okay. Now let's look at this first DB part. Okay. So let's go to this DB folder and this MongoDB. So what we're doing here, we are importing context, log, OS time, or whatever the required. Okay, mainly the driver part. Then we are getting the MongoDB URI value from the environment, or the say your local environment. So what you should do, you have to first set the MongoDB URI value here. So export, then space MongoDB URI equal to, just get your MongoDB. It could be localhost, it could be your, say, the easiest way is actually you can go to MongoDB Atlas and get a free cluster running and just simply get the URL from here. Okay. Now let's go back to the main, and so let's go back to the MongoDB. Okay, so DB MongoDB, just get the MongoDB URL, or you can just directly paste the MongoDB URL here and it will work. Okay. Then this function connect DB. Okay, this function is actually utilizing to connect with the MongoDB server. So client error equals to MongoDB.new client, then option.client.apply, then the apply URI, there is a DB URL. So it is to create the connection. Okay. If any error, it will just error out and it will exit. Okay. Then you are just getting some context to make sure it's connect, and if it's not connect, then it will reconnect. And as a database, we are using the database name as DemoDB, and in that collection you are using books, because we will be interacting with the books collection. Okay. So this connect DB URL is actually returning this book collection. Okay. You might just want to return this DB part, but since I'm just working with a single collection, I'm returning the collection. It's up to your choice how you want to interact with the database. Okay. Then what is next? If you go to the main.go file, then I'm interacting with the handlers. What do you have in the handlers? So if you go to handlers, this handlers.go file, you will find you have all the logics. For example, get books. Okay, which is I'm making a MongoDB query to get all the books list from all the collection up from the books collection. And then if you see this get book, getting a single book or single item from the books collection using the ID parameter. Okay, and so you're using marks.var, which is the URI parameter. I'll just show you in a few minutes. And then we are using create book to create the resource or create the book record. Then if you go down, there is update book to update the book record. Now what is this exactly book? Okay, if you go to this models, okay, and then models book.go, you see I have imported the BSON structure and I have created a struct. Okay, so in this struct or this data structure, we have specified a book data structure which is ID. It will be the underscore ID field. Then the title would be the title. Okay, then shorter author is the author. And see, we are using this, but how it should represent to the BSON or JSON, we are specifying in this particular part. So you can have any field that should map whatever you mention in the JSON mapping. Okay, so basically underscore ID will be converted to the ID part. Okay, so this is the data structure we are defining in this part here. Okay, and that is what we are utilizing in the handlers in this particular file. So there you see this book model, and then we are storing the request data into the book, and we're doing it. I will come to that. Okay, but just for now, think that there are function which is for example get books, get single book, or create book, then there is update book, and there is delete book, which is the CRUD basics. Okay, create, read, then update and delete. Okay, that is the CRUD basic. That is the meaning of the CRUD. Okay, and then if you see every function there, we have this W, that is the HTTP response writer, and R for the HTTP request, because we're going to deal with the HTTP request and response. Okay, now let's go very down to again the main file. Now let's go with the flow. Okay, we now covered what is the DB part. We now covered what is the handlers part, which is the most important here, because handlers hold the logic of our application or REST APIs. Okay, first what you're doing, first we are creating a router that is from the mux, and mux we have imported. Okay, this is Gorilla mux. This is the path to the GitHub. Then we are creating, or not just creating, we are connecting with the DB and returning the collection here. Okay, so db.connectdb, and if you remember correctly, the connectdb return the collection, so the memory address to the collection which connect the DB. So the DB connects its state. Okay, that is important here. Then we are using handler. So we are using handler.handler. Then we are passing this particular connection, which is an active connection to the database DB, that, and we are passing that here. Okay, then we have our say routes here. So router.handle function, that is dash say /books, then router.handle function, that is /books. Then this is how we can pass the URL parameter like ID or anything that, or say name, whatever you want to pass on as a URL parameter, that we can pass from here. Okay, then this books, that is the, you can see, and we can also mention the methods, like it's the get method, which is the post method, which is the put method, and which is the delete method. So this is how we can pass the methods as well. And then at the very end, just run the server, which is http.listen and serve. So this is an application server. Remember, we can have a web server, we can have an application server. So this is an application server that is hosting on the port 8000. Okay, and you can see we are passing what? The router. So this router is passed to the HTTP server. Okay, so whatever this paths the server receives, it will map to the functions, and function then will call the function that we have defined in the handler. This is the very basic thing happening here. Okay, now let's go to each and every of these routes. Okay, the very first one is the /books. Okay, which is the get books. And let's look at the code, I mean /book code. So let's go to the handlers, and then of course handler.go file, and look at this get books. So you can see func h handler. Okay, this is where you are defining the struct and this particular collection which hold the MongoDB, that Mongo collection part. Okay, so this is how all the function will have access to the MongoDB collection directly. So func h handler, which is, now again, if you're not sure what I'm doing here, you should check the past courses, mainly the interface part. Okay, so this get books function have the writer, that is the HTTP writer and HTTP request. Okay, it's passing the two parameter here. And then the very first thing you're doing here, we are setting the application response type as a JSON, because it's going to be a JSON response. Then we are defining var books, and what is referencing to? Is referencing to the custom data type that we are defining, the model.book. Okay, you can see here the models.book.go, and this is the structure we are defined here. Okay, now let's go back to the handler, and then we are setting the context, which is the when to the request timeout happen and all that. Then we are calling the collection to find that. So h.collection.find, and this is the condition part or the matching part. See, match query. Here we are just calling all the data. Okay, and if any error happen, maybe the connection error or maybe the formatting error, anything, we'll get the error here, and it will just return it. Okay, and then we are deferring cursor.close, because cursor will keep running until it's find all the data. Okay, which is happening here. Okay, so cursor.next will keep getting the data, and it will store all the data into this this array, books array. See, var books, then array of the model books, it will store there. And inside this cursor part, you can see var, then book model, just defining the item part. Then cursor.decode book, because the format that we get the data is in the bson, right? This is a cursor, that's why you're using cursor.decode to the book. So this is this format part. We are decoding to this particular format they defined here. Okay, and then we are appending that particular book to the books array. Okay, this is how we'll have all the list data. Then you can see the JSON dot new encoder, then the W stands for what? The response, the writer. Okay, so response writer, you can see the response writer, we are sending the books array. So it is writing to the response writer so that it will send as a response to the user or the client. Okay, then we are doing the similar thing for the getbook, only different part here. We are just getting the one record using the ID. And how we are getting the ID from the URL parameter? Because if you go to the main.go file, you can see we are passing what? The ID. So this is the function book slash the ID, and we are using handler.getBook. Okay, and this is also a get method. So if we go to the particular handler, you can see getBook, and of course the parameter we are getting the request and the response writer and the request, and we are again setting the application response to the application JSON. Then you are defining book model book. This is the that particular struct that you are defined for a book. Then we are getting the particular ID using from where? Using mux. The mux is used for the URI routing. For example, what I'm talking about is this writing. Okay, so this URLs, you see, this URLs actually you can form using the mux. Okay, so that's why if you want to get the ID, you should be getting using the mux only. That is why mux verse, then from where you can get the particular variable, right? From the request, because what in the request we get the URL, right? So from the request URL you are getting the ID parameter. Okay, and you are storing the ID before just storing in the ID field. We are converting to the hex format, because when making the query you will be doing that using the hex format. So we are setting the context, that is the request timeout. Then you are calling h.collection find one. Then in the context you are setting the value. Then bson.m, this is the matching part, where you are matching underscore ID should match the value of ID field. Okay, and after that we are simply decoding or storing into the and book. Okay, so we are storing after getting the value in this find one, we are storing the value into this book field. Okay, and again while storing we are decoding. So we are decoding or we are converting to the particular structure that you have defined in the book variable. Okay, or you can see we are referencing here. Then after getting the value, we are simply using JSON.new encoder. Then W stands for what? The response writer, and we are sending that response writer as a data, as the book data we are sending as the JSON data. Okay, we are encoding JSON and sending to the response writer. Okay, then they are doing the similar thing for the creating book, but what is the difference here? See, here also we are getting the we are creating a structure for the book, and this JSON.new encoder, then our body, you see, so on the request body, because see in, okay, if you go to this main.go file, there will see the router handle function, then slash books, and then there is handler.create book, and method is what? Post. So we'll be sending data in the post call to create the record, right, from the client. So that's the reason if you go to handler, you will see we are getting the data, we are getting the book data from the request body, and request, because in the request we can have what? URL, we can have the method, and what next? We can have the request body. See, from the request body we are getting the book data, we are decoding into this, and then we are using the inside one function in the MongoDB. There is a MongoDB function, by the way. So using h.collection, h is what? The handler we are getting the collection. So h.collection.inside one function, and there we are supplying the first the context part, then the data part, and the data part is the most important part, by the way. And then we are if any error, it will error out. If the all okay, then we just in the response we are sending the result part, okay, which is basically the ID of the response or ID of the record that is created. Then if you go to the main.go file, what we are doing next, we are updating using the put call. Okay, So again, go back to the handler, and we're using the update book function, right? And again, all are same except, I mean, not except, you see here additionally we are getting the ID from the what URL, okay? And from the requests are, from the request we are getting the ID, from the request URL we are getting the ID. Then we are saying context from the request body. Art body means the request body, we are getting the book, okay? That is, we want to update the field, we want to update, okay? And then we are using the function called update one. So h.collection.update1 function you're calling. You have to supply the context, you have to supply the main important part here is this bson.m. M stand for matching with ID. So whatever ID you get in the URL, we are matching with the particular database records, and whatever record match the condition here, you are setting the book. So whatever value you get in the books, we are updating all the values there, okay? Even error, it will error out. If all okay, then we are just in the result we will have the updated data, and we are just returning the updated data, okay? Then in the delete book call, which is again, if you go to the main.go file, there you have this delete call, right? See, router.handler, then in the URL format you have /books/id, and then we are calling this particular function called handler.deleteBook, and there you have a delete method, right? So let's go to the handler function, and let's think about this, what this function does, the final function does, which is here we are first of course setting up the response header, which is the application JSON type. You are getting the ID from the what mux.vers, just like for the put call or the get call, for a particular getting ID, the record part, there you get this ID from the request URL, right? So for the delete call also, because if you see in the main.go, we are getting this ID, so that ID or record, I mean, we have to delete a record that matches this ID, right? So in the handler, we are this delete book function, we are getting the ID from the request, okay? And of course we are hexing it because we want to query, we have to use the hex query. Then you are using collection, so h.collection, which is handler.collection dot delete one. This is the function to delete one record, okay? So delete one, then supply the context, most importantly match, m for match. So it's matching whatever record underscore ID that value matches with the ID, that record will be deleted from the database, okay? And if any error, it will throw the error. If all good, then JSON dot new encoder, then the writer, which is the response writer dot encode, it will return the JSON result, okay, which is the result part. So this is what all happening in this particular handler, and this is all to it, okay? This is the basic REST API that we have developed, and all the logics are here. Now let's run this particular application and try out using the Postman. Now to run this particular application, go inside this Go REST API folder and run go run main.go. And if you run it, that's it. It will just, if any error, it will throw out the error. If all going good, which is not showing anything, that means it's running fine. You can add additional log if you want to, it's up to you. Now using the Postman, you want to test out this API. So let's go to the Postman. Now first is that we are going to create a one record. So sample book one, okay? Say my name, author is Sandip Das, and ISBN some random number you just put, okay? Now let's call this, send the request, and see it's in this particular ID, right? Now I just want to fetch all the records, and see this part, localhost 8000, because we are running our application on the 8000 port, and /books is the post call. First we are creating a record, that using this just the books part, okay? We are just getting all the records. So because it's calling the get books function, and it will just list out all the books. Then we can just call one particular record, because see we have this many records, right? We just want to get one particular record, that is this one that we just created. This is the ID, okay? So just go here and paste in the URL. So the localhost 8000 /books, because this is the URL part, and ID part, see there's a curly braces ID is applying there. So the ID part, just call it and you will get all the records. So sample book 1 Sandip Das, okay? And then you go to the delete. Now this book that you have created, okay, with this ID, with this ID we can delete it. So again the method you can see for post call, the method of post, for the get call, for just getting the books, it was get method. For getting one single record, of course get method, but in the URL it was the only resource identifier was the main additional ID part. Okay, and then in the delete, we just have the delete method, HTTP delete. Then the URL part we have books, and if you remember right, then in the curly braces we are supplying the ID, right? So we can supply the ID part here, and if we just call it, it'll just deleted count one. That means the record is deleted. And if we call again the /books API, okay, you see it returning only one book. Previously in the record we have, suppose we want to delete this one as well, so we can just go to delete API. So delete, then localhost :8000/books, and in this particular resource ID part, okay, just paste the new ID and see deleted count. If you go to the /books and try to fetch the record, null, because we have deleted all the resources. Okay, so this is how we can interact with our API as a RESTful way, because we are using what, only the HTTP methods and the URL to interact with the resources that is getting created, deleted, updated in the databases. So this is how we can create and interact with the REST APIs. Now let me show you from the Go application itself or Go code itself, how can you interact with the say APIs itself. Okay, so in the again same folder, if you see, there is a file called client.go. What I'm doing with this client.go file, I can interact with the database. Okay, first I'm just again defining as a book structure. Okay, ID, title and all that. Okay, all the details I'm just structuring here. Then I am writing of the main code. I'm saying what is the base URL. If you remember in the Postman, the URL was HTTP. Then because we are running in the localhost, right? So localhost 8000 port we are running the application. Then sample book. Okay, we were first creating a sample book format, which is title, author and ISBN. I'm just giving one sample record here. Then we are calling the create books, then calling the update book, get book or delete book function to interact with the APIs. Okay, now what is it in the actually in the create book function? If you go to create book, see base URL we are supplying, that is this base URL here, and the record, that is the sample book. Okay, so you are supplying that too in the function. Then in the JSON book, you can see JSON book, json.marshall.book. There we are converting to the JSON format. Then we are sending that to the particular book. Okay, by the way, if you see this part here, models. Okay, so we are, when supplying the creating the models part, the sample book actually come from the model.book. Okay, not from this structure, by the way, just to give you a heads up. Okay, so that record we have supplied in the create book function. And in the create book function, it's just simply calling http.post. So how we can call the external APIs? We can call http.post, and where from this HTTP coming? HTTP is a package from the net. So net HTTP, that package you are importing, and using that HTTP package you can call the external APIs. So http.post, then you have to give the URL, then what is the request, and then the response JSON that you are and then the request JSON that you want to send. Okay, and after that, if any error, it will throw error. If all goes good, it will simply say response, like you have created one successfully record and we got the response. Then using in the get books, if you remember, we get all the books, right? So we are calling here also, we are calling http.get base URL books to get all the records, and then we are iterating, we are just converting that records into the books. Okay, and this books is actually this book. Okay, if you just go down and come to this books part, see this word books is equal to this particular structure that you have defined here, book, which is similar to the response structure. Okay, and then while we just converting after getting the response data, we're decoding to this in books array part. Okay, and returning the books so that we can get the ID from this particular records, and that we can call just to get one record. We can call the URL. Again, in the URL we have to supply the particular ID. Okay, so that's why you see http.get base URL slash books plus ID. We are supplying the ID to fetch one particular record. Okay. In the update book, if you see here, we are just making one, say http.new request, then http method put base URL, which is the base URL slash books ID. Okay. Then the request body, we have to send the that JSON data. Okay. So which is JSON.marshal book, that is the JSON data we are sending, and we are calling the client, and we are getting the response. Okay. If any error, it will just throw error. If all good, then we'll just send the response, or it will print the response. For the delete book also, we're doing something similar, which is http.new request, and there we are saying http method delete, then base URL plus slash books.id, because the URL parameter is same. And then data parameter, we're not sending anything because we're not sending any data. We're just calling the client, and then see client.do request. And then if all good, it will we just print the response. If any error, it will just error out. So this is what you are doing in the client. Now let's run this particular client. So let's go to cd this day 07, okay, and then cd dot go REST API, and then run this particular client.go. If you just run it, you see. So it's first, if you just go like this way, see it created the book response. So we sent one sample data, the sample book, right? That is why book it generated the ID, and the title of course is sample book, author John Doe, and ISBN some random number. Okay. Then I have iterated through all these books. See, once I get the response from the using the get books API call, I just simply iterated through one data. So once it iterated once. And then first book ID just printed the, because I'm getting the ID here. See, from the books array, the 0 means the first one element, and I.id means the ID field data, which is this one. Okay, and then I am updating just the particular title, updated book, and I am just simply sending that updated book base URL. Then the in the ID part, we're sending the book ID, what we have got here. Okay, and the new updated book title is a sample book, and you're sending here, and the response, if you see here, update book response, match count 1, modified count 1, like so, one record modified. Okay, and then in the get book function, we just call that, because see, we have updated the particular record, right? How we can confirm? So using the get book API, we just call that one particular record that you have updated. So base URL, we just supplied the particular ID, and that's how we got this particular ID. If you see, matching 32, then title updated book. So of course the record got updated, and the other fields value is same. And using the delete call, we are simply deleting the record, and each output in the deleted count, we are getting this 1. So that means successfully deleted the record. So this is how we can interact with the APIs via the Go code as well. And this is important because as a DevOps engineer, we have to interact with the external APIs, multiple APIs at once. Okay, this is very handy that way. Now, the final part of the session, which is secure communication with TLS. Now, what is this TLS? So secure communication in a web application typically involves implementing TLS, which is transport layer security, which encrypts the data sent over the network, making it difficult for the attacker to intercept or tamper with the data. Now, to secure communication with TLS, especially for the web server like the one you just created in code just now, we should be using a certificate, okay, or HTTP certificate. Now, you should get a certificate from, say, GoDaddy or maybe third party, which is a trusted one. That just for our development purposes, okay, you can just run this particular command, which is OpenSSL request. Then in all this code you can run, and it will generate two files, ski.pem and the cert.pem. Okay, and in our Go application, just in the place where you are running on port 8000, change that to port 443 and supply there. See this particular function, listen and serve TLS. Okay, and there supply the certain key, which is actually it should be the proper certification, that is a key file from the actual provider that you should be utilizing. Okay, now let me show you in the Go application how you should be working with this. Let me quickly show you guys. Okay, now let's come back to the code and just clean this code part. Okay, so look at this file main.go, and at the very end of the main.go file, there is HTTP dot listen and serve, which is port 8000, and we are supplying the router. Okay. Now look at the main underscore https.go file. Okay. There, if you see query end HTTP listen and serve TLS. So the difference is what? Here we have just listen and serve. In the HTTPS cases, you will have listen and serve TLS. The port number should be 443. There you should be supplying the cert and the key and the, of course, the router, because this is the REST API, right? Then you should have this. Okay, so this is how you can serve the HTTPS application. Now if you run main https.go like this, you see it's running. Now if you go to the browser, let me show what you can what we'll get in the browser. So let's go to the browser, and there if you just go to localhost, then like say just run https localhost and you will see the magic there. So https localhost, see it's saying page not found, but if you just go to the /books, see null because you don't have a record, so we can just create one record. So let's quickly use the postman to insert one record and see that here. Okay, so let's go to the postman part and let's create one record here. So in there post https, let's send it. See, it created the record there. Let's refresh it. See, now we have the value here. Okay, so this is one way you can use the HTTPS, which is the browser will say it's not secure because it's actually not secure. We are using self-signed certificate. Okay, just as some test certificate using the command that we have got here. Using this particular command, we're generating key and file, and we're utilizing that, which is not ideal, but for our development purpose, this is fine. Okay. Okay, so we have covered all the things that I was supposed to show you guys today, and hope you guys learned something interesting. And thank you. I hope you like this video. If you really like the video, please put one like in this video and share this video with others so that others also can get to learn how to develop a REST API in Go. And I have detailed given all the source code in the comment section. You can just go and use that source code to run the application and test it out yourself. Okay, and hope to see you guys soon in my next video. Bye bye.